Good afternoon, everyone. Today's edition of Who's in the House with Michael. I'm with my dear friend, Bill Ferro, otherwise known as William V. Ferro, William Vance Ferro, right?
That's it. How you doing, bud?
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your time. I know it's hard to get you away for an hour to just kind of socialize with me, but thought we'd have some fun today.
I'm all in.
So, where were you born? I don't know that.
Oh, born in Rego Park, Queens.
Ah, interesting. I worked there for a little bit. And when did you move out of Queens? When did your family move out of Queens?
So we moved from Rego Park to Howard Beach. I went to PS 232 in Queens for kindergarten, first grade, maybe second grade, then moved to East Northport.
I've done it almost my whole life, so it's interesting when these things come up in a conversation. Cause, I don't think I remember that.
Right.
I may have known it, but I don't remember it. So you were first grade when you got to East Northport?
Second
grade.
Mm-hmm.
Harley Avenue.
Yes.
You're still friends with a lot of people from school, right?
A few. I mean, listen, there's us and you know, our boys,
Yeah.
but
Well, let's do social media.
yeah, there's social media. You still see people.
Siblings, let's talk about that.
Got one sister, Sari,
Yeah.
as you know, lives in the city. Is director of human resources or vice president for human resources for the UJA, which is a very busy organization right now.
Yeah. Sure. It's a whole different video. What did your parents do when you were born?
What did they do when I
What
was
kind of work?
born?
What did
So
they
my dad was in a union. He did window displays for a men's clothing store. Eventually did it on his own. You know, it's a freelance.
So was he doing that in Queens back in the day?
He was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And eventually he went freelance on his own.
He did.
Was that after he got out to the suburbs?
Yeah, a while after we were out here.
All right.
Yeah.
Was your mom working back then, early on?
My mom worked, I mean, I don't know exactly when she started. She worked at Harbor Fields High School in the reading lab for a while.
Ah.
She worked for a dentist for a while, and then she had her own business selling invitations and stationery.
That I
and
remember.
things like that. Yeah,
That I remember well. I'm pretty sure she helped us out a couple times.
probably.
Yeah. So, what were your hobbies when you were a young child in elementary school early on? What kind of things were you into?
Sports, really, I think, you know, neighborhood kind of stuff. You know, your friends when you were real childhood, elementary school, were not necessarily the friends that you had in high school.
Right.
But growing up, we had great kids in the neighborhood. You know, we played a lot of baseball, football. We played roller hockey. We were all Ranger fans. We played roller hockey in front of the Islanders' houses.
Yeah.
Brian Trottier, Wayne Merrick.
Crazy, right?
Yeah. We would just put on our uniforms and play in front of their house.
And immediately the scene in my head is Wayne's World. Game on!
Yeah.
Game on, right? That's what it is.
Pretty
Play
much.
hockey in the
Yep.
suburbs. So sports, a lot of sports.
Sports music, of course.
And music.
We loved music growing up.
Yeah, you have a love for music. You've always had that love.
Yep.
With music, what is your connection to music? Like, what do you really, when you hear music, what do you hear?
Lyrics.
You do?
I do.
Because I'm the opposite.
I know.
I can't even tell you the words to some of my favorite songs.
Well, that's because you're listening to the beat and the rhythm.
I'm totally dialed into every other instrument going on in the thing, and I never focus on the thing. Right. Did you always find yourself focused on music when you were young, on the lyric part? Did that always come through to you?
I think so, you know, because not being a musician, you look for the spirit, you know, the spiritual sort of, you know, message in the music, and that usually comes from the lyrics. And
yeah,
you know.
The reason I brought that up is because I remember there was a point in school. I mean, we've known each other a real long time. We go back pretty long, and I remember a point where poetry was kind of getting into your soul a little bit. You started writing a little bit. Mm-hmm. When do you think that started?
I'd probably say, you know, late junior high into high school.
Okay.
I needed to find something that might help me stand out because I wasn't much of a student. So
you say.
So we say.
You got through.
We did. I mean, it's, you know, we're here now, but back then I didn't think we'd be much of anything.
I think we were all focused on other things.
Yes.
It was application of our time, which wasn't important to us, right? So, all right. So as you're coming through high school, did you have an idea of what your career might be later on?
None whatsoever, except that my high school yearbook said plans include living off egg sandwiches and being a physical therapist.
Interesting.
So, still eating egg sandwiches, but I'm more in need of a physical therapist than actually being one.
When you were very popular in high school.
That's okay.
And sometimes for the wrong reasons.
Right.
You know,
right.
getting into some trouble for fun. But When do you think the academic bug started taking a hold on you and make you feeling like this is a priority? I should start, maybe growing up a little bit with that.
So I did use some of that poetry to help get into college.
Okay.
Said I had some special talent, and I applied. But I had a real tough time when I got to Buffalo. Got a 0.4 my first semester of college.
Plutarski?
That's four F's and a D. 1 credit D, I think, for those keeping track at home. Immediately was on academic probation and dorm probation for the extracurricular activities. Pulled it up to probably a 1.5 second semester, and kind of got through the next year as a communication major. So it probably wasn't until junior year that I started to think about what maybe I could be when I grew up.
So when you went to Buffalo, you really didn't have an idea?
No.
And you were accepted, probably the creative writing probably helped you get in, you thinking?
Right. So I think, I'm not making an excuse, but thinking I really was going to be a physical therapist, I had to take chemistry, calculus, statistics all, first semester.
Yeah.
Not going to class and taking those classes is kind of tough.
Yeah. And listen, your story is not that uncommon. A lot of kids struggle through the freshman year.
Oh, yeah.
It's distracting. You break away from home. You have freedom. You're allowed to do whatever you want, eat whatever you want, drink, whatever goes with it.
Right.
And that becomes not a focus until some point when you get a kick in the ass.
Right.
When did your kick in the ass come?
I'd say junior year. I was kind of floundering, didn't know what I was going to do or where I was going to go. And I started to think about the law and took a couple law classes, and kind of got a bug for criminal law.
And we all, as a group of friends, took a class in high school called business law. We had a great teacher that we loved, McCormick, Mac, right? And unfortunately for our little group of friends, we had a big lunch break at the end of the day and came back for one class only. So if we came back for class, there was a lot of hooligans. But what was really kind of funny then is we actually all did well in the class in spite of our attitudes.
Right.
Right? So that might have been your first exposure. That was your first exposure then to thinking that maybe?
Maybe. Listen, I wasn't a huge Mac fan, I guess. Maybe it had something to do with the fact that I had him for, was it typing that we took?
Yeah.
And he'd say, well, you skipped my class this morning, but you showed up for my class this afternoon, or you showed up for my class in the morning and you skipped the class in the afternoon. And then he was the basketball coach, and
we're kind of painting a little bit of a picture of your profile already.
Right.
You're a little resistant to authority a little bit.
A little bit, still am.
Yeah. Right. And you've always been outspoken in a very polite way, and popular, right? So junior year, you start dabbling in to see if maybe the law is something you're interested in?
Yeah.
What classes were you taking that kind of got you there?
Took some criminal justice classes probably, and some other classes, and read some books on people who had been wrongly incarcerated, some death row stuff, and wrote a paper on recidivism, people who get arrested time and time again, and how their backgrounds might, have something to do with that, and how they're raised, single family, households and things of that nature. And I just became a little bit passionate about it, or more passionate about that than I was about anything else at the time.
Well, this is very interesting because I know you now, and I know the history. And when I usually do these conversations, I start finding these little seeds back in the day that start adding up to where we became, right? So let's go back to your family a little bit. Pretty spiritual family.
Yeah.
Right?
I'd say.
On a weekly basis, going to synagogue.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that seems to have carried over afterwards. A lot of us, once we get to that point where our parents aren't making us go to church or temple anymore, we're kind of done with it.
Right.
That didn't really happen. You did it?
Well, I married a woman that was probably more religious, than I am.
Okay.
And it wasn't really as much about the religion as it was about religious identity, I think. And so, we just tried to instill that same religious identity in our kids, and put them through Hebrew school and bar mitzvahs and things of that nature, just to sort of carry on the family tradition. And then they get older, and like we know, they do whatever they want anyway.
When did you meet Barb?
Freshman year of college.
Freshman year of college. Did you know right away you guys were it?
I kind of sensed it. My buddy Larry, he claims that I called him and said, I met her. And he said, who? And I go, the one. And he goes, how could you meet the one? You've just been in college for a couple of weeks. I said, well, I'll have some fun, and then I'll make sure she's the one. But yeah.
Do you think Barb knew then that you were the one?
Well, I can't say she married me for my brains or my money, because at the time I was, a dishwasher in the college cafeteria,
Right.
and I wasn't doing so well in school.
Right.
So there was something about us that just clicked.
Yeah.
Like you and Louise.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys go back a long way too. We probably hung out in college together as couples at some
Sure.
point. So you kind of get that feeling, and you see where it goes.
Were you
and-
exclusively dating early on in college?
Yeah, our first date was November of our freshman year. So we kind of hung out a little bit, and she had a boyfriend back home, and I need to sow some wild oats
Right.
one night at a time.
So going back to what we were talking about a minute ago, when you started dabbling, you wrote a paper, recidivism, people being repetitive. Why do you think that really stuck with you?
Because I think that what I thought right off at the beginning was that there was an inequity in the law, that the law wasn't fair for all people, even though it's supposed to be, that there's not necessarily an even playing field, that young men, young women from housing projects are more likely to commit crimes than kids growing up in a suburban household. And I started to wonder why that was, and then why the courts in turn weren't really being fair or didn't necessarily care about those kids, and that's really what that first paper was. It talked about, jail is supposed to rehabilitate people.
Yeah.
And I argue that they weren't habilitated in the first place. I wasn't sure that was a word, but nobody taught them sometimes the difference between right and wrong.
Right.
And the prison system, whether it was Rikers Island or a juvenile facility or even a state system, didn't really care about the people becoming better citizens when they got out. They just cared about them doing their time.
I find it interesting because I think that's a very mature thought and point of view for someone who's in their young 20s. And I'm kind of connecting the dots to the way you were raised, spiritually, giving. I mean, your father participated on Friday nights at Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
He was part of the community. He didn't just show up. In other words, he was part of the culture of the synagogue and the people and part of the community. And I feel like these are the things that were taught to you that you also adopted. You didn't just run from them.
Sure. I mean, we're raised in the Jewish faith with the idea of tzedakah, charity, giving back, or they call it tikkun olam, which is giving back to other people. So I think that was, ingrained in a lot of us that grew up in a family that attended synagogue and had those sort of values. And maybe those values did transcend, at a young age to looking at other people and saying, how can I help them? As you said, in the synagogue, my parents were very involved, and the synagogue did a lot of charitable work. They brought in people that were homeless and fed them, and other people who had mental issues, unfortunately, and they would bring them in on a Sunday. And I know that was something my dad took a lot of pride in.
This is very important to me because as an adult, I'm really dialed into this emotionally. And I think I missed this as a kid. I missed this as a young adult. And I think I had a lot of distractions going on that just, my eyes were somewhere else. And I didn't see that and now miss the value of it and want to kind of participate in that. So that's a cool thing to me that you had that young. It was in you in school. Do you think you wrote that paper from that angle on that recidivism thing, a little rebellious too?
I don't know if it was
fucking the system, kind of kicking the ass a little.
Maybe. Listen, I was looking for something to turn me on academically.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I gravitated towards that, having no idea that I would become a lawyer or even have an opportunity to go to law school.
Okay.
For a lot of reasons.
So after the paper, at this point, do you have the bug now and you've decided I'm going to be a lawyer?
Well, I decided I'm going to try. Remember, so I've got my cumulative GPA when it's time to apply up to maybe a 2.7.
Okay.
Not really law school material.
Right.
So it all, came down to the LSAT and the test, and for the first time in my life, having to apply myself and study. Because at that point, junior year, I'd kind of gotten over. Even if my grades got better, my classes had gotten easier.
Yeah.
So, I started, I took classes to sort of get over and raise that GPA. So to study for that exam was important. I spent the summer up there doing that.
You did well?
I did really well. Yeah.
Because you applied yourself. It was in you all the time. The academics of earning grades was a whole different exercise.
It was. And the type of test that the LSAT is you can teach yourself to do well at it if you really apply yourself.
I just learned to become a good test taker now.
Right.
Well, a few years ago.
Right.
You know, honestly,
Right.
I didn't have it then. In
Right.
high school, I thought I was going to be a musician. I could
Right.
care less.
Mhm.
I just wanted to be popular.
Right.
It wasn't until I didn't get the call from Aerosmith that I woke up and said, shit, I need to figure out something, right? And then I got in barely on a 2.5. And once I got there and realized I was paying for this, I started applying myself. And all of a sudden, the table turned for me. And it sounds like similar
It is.
to you.
Hey, you know what I was going to say, Mike, that if we had cell phones back then, you might have got the call from Aerosmith. But then I thought about it, and neither one of us would have been able to afford a cell phone, so we wouldn't have got the call anyway.
The big brick.
Right.
It was so expensive when it all started. Okay, so you applied to more than one law school?
Yes.
Okay.
Multiple.
And did you get to choose the one, or
I
did they
did.
choose you?
No, I did. I got into quite a few.
And you chose to go to
Brooklyn Law.
Brooklyn Law. Okay. I was thinking of a different school.
Mm-hmm. That's okay.
Did it come after?
No.
Okay.
No, I went to Brooklyn Law School, which is one of the oldest law schools in the country.
I have St. John's in my head.
Oh, well.
Okay. All right. So Brooklyn Law, how many years is that?
3.
And is the first year kind of like same in college? You're just kind of taking general stuff. You don't know where you're going to land yet?
It is, except it's nothing like college, because from the moment you walk into the first class, it's intense. The professors are up your ass. And again, so here I am, having only studied for one exam in my entire life, and now they're throwing books at me. And the books are, 1,000 pages each, and they're giving you homework every night. And so the first thing I did the first week of law school was went out and got a job. And my thinking was, I'm not going to do so well in school, so maybe I need to start building up my resume right from the start.
Yeah.
The dean came to me and said, I understand you have a job. We discourage first-year full-time law students from getting a job. And I said, well, I appreciate that, but I'm not going to be your typical student, and I got to pay my rent. So,
What kind of job did you get?
I got a job working in a law firm. I worked for a criminal attorney named Harold Price Farringer, a distinguished man that was nationally known as one of the best criminal defense attorneys in the country. He had done some high publicity cases, and it was a great experience until I got fired.
Why would you get fired for that job?
Well, because we had this, we have in law school, the first year you have to write these really important papers.
Yeah.
And it's very competitive. People are hiding books in the library, like anything you've ever heard and seen, they hide books, so other students can't get to them. So I I got a job and we got a whole library at my office. So I brought my 2 buddies to this really prestigious law firm, and we were wearing sweatpants and work boots and maybe football jerseys or hoodies. And we had some fun. And then they told me they no longer need it. I can finish my paper.
Wow. Didn't give you a warning. So how did that affect you?
Listen, it makes you have to be more responsible. And you learn. Listen, besides the fact that I learned that, I also learned that when I showed up to my first day at the job, I was wearing gray tight pants, a white button down, a skinny tie. Remember the skinny ties? Yeah. And Capizios.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not quite the look.
So it looked more like a club look instead of a professional look.
Yeah. Not really the corporate lawyer look.
What was your takeaway from working there? How long did you work there for?
Probably a half a year.
And what was your takeaway for the 6 months? Did you get anything out of that
experience? I did,
experience?
because he was so great. I learned to talk really low, which became my sort of distinguishing characteristic at trial. Some trial lawyers are screamers. I talk so low that judges would ask me to speak up during my summation because they'd like to hear it as well. But Harold Price Farringer spoke so quietly. And I said to him one day, I don't get it. You're a trial lawyer. How could you speak so low? And he goes, I want the jurors to bend over to want to hear what I say, to pay attention to everything I say.
That's right. So, I learned that piece from someone also. I didn't adopt the style, but I learned the value of it when I used to work for Scotto and Sabaro. I would sit in that boardroom, and on the other end of the table was Sabaro, and he would just sit and listen, not say a word. And when he spoke. So listen, you were like, it's kind of like the old commercial, E.F. Hutton speaks, everyone's listening.
Right.
And that's the value. That's what he was teaching you was, listen, if I talk low, people have to dial in and pay attention to me, right?
Right.
Okay. So what'd you do after you got fired there? Did you just stick with the...
Yeah, listen, I got some other jobs. As I said, I had to pay my rent. So, did some entrepreneurial things within the law school that we don't need to talk about. Yeah. But became president of the Student Bar Association, which was, sort of shocking to the dean also.
Why did you do that? Why did you go for that position?
Well, listen, again, a little bit of a resume builder. But at that point, I thought that it would be interesting to see if I could lead. I had done some stuff in college, student government wise, and this was kind of a bigger step, maybe a bigger step than I was really ready for from a maturity standpoint. But it worked out pretty.
Again, it's adding up for me, knowing who you are and where you come from. I mean, you like the attention in school, right? Now you're doing this thing to try. You're out front. You're out in front. Yes, it's a resume builder, but you weren't afraid. You're not afraid, right, to put yourself out there, and I think those contribute to who you actually became. When did you know that you were going to be a criminal attorney?
I knew that, and I don't know what. Maybe it was after working for Farringer, or I got an internship at the DA's office. I want to say third year of law school, right next door to Kings County DA's office, and I really liked that. And I thought for sure that I was going to be a prosecutor, even though my mentality sort of leaned the other way. I worked in the homicide bureau for like four ADAs that were just incredible, four incredible guys that were just prosecuting bad guys and doing a great job of it.
I can't help but think learning that side of it makes you a better defense attorney.
I think ultimately it probably did. What happened was, much to the four guys I work for chagrin, I did not get the job when I interviewed there. I had 5 interviews. I had 4 interviews, got rejected. They went in there, said to the district attorney, "You guys are crazy. You need to interview him again. He's like the best intern we've had." And I found at the time the DA's office didn't want people with outward personalities.
Right.
They wanted people they can sort of put in a box and sort of wind up and go and say, do this, do this, do this. And I was a little too, I don't want to say radical, but I had too much of my own ideas and thoughts.
So then what happens? What's the next move?
So I switched.
Switched teams.
Yeah. Applied to the public defender's office.
Public defender's office. No money in this.
Same as the DA. It would have been the same money. Any public service, you kind of start, rock bottom. Back then it was probably 26 grand, I think.
Which is actually not the worst thing back in the day. In the 80s we're talking about, right?
I had a job. My girlfriend, future wife, had a job. We lived.
Yeah.
I didn't have to get a second job. But I do remember when I went to interview, my last interview was a guy with an attorney named Ed Mayer. May he rest in peace. My mentor, friend, and just somebody who I looked up to. 3 tours of Vietnam. And he's ran this public defender's office. And he said to me, he looked at my resume and said, "What are you doing here?" He goes, "You just worked in the DA's office for a year. Why would you want to come over here?" And, I didn't want to tell him because I didn't get a job there, but I looked him in the eye and said, "Listen, they didn't give me a job. And if you give me a job, I will kick their ass every day that I work here." That's all I said. That will be my mission. Call it revenge, and he wound up hiring me, and it wound up being a great.
Now, for us lay folks out there, there's attorneys and then there's trial attorneys. It's a difference, right? Really?
Sure.
Not everybody can stand there like on TV and argue in front of a judge.
No. Just like everybody, myself included, couldn't do patent and trademark law. Couldn't do it. It's well beyond my knowledge and my expertise. But it's not easy to be a trial lawyer. You're right. You have to have a certain ability to speak in front of people, a certain confidence, and then an ability to work or outwork other people, especially on the criminal law side. We do criminal and civil, but on the criminal law side, when I was doing big cases, murder cases, somebody's facing life in jail.
Right.
That trial goes on for 2 weeks. You may not sleep for those 2 weeks, an hour here, an hour there, because you're just up all night trying to find a loophole in the district attorney's case.
I would also say tenacity. You have to have a personality tenacious to be able to get in there and argue.
Do.
It's not just the knowledge,
right.
Not just the skill set of knowing the law, and you have to be tenacious.
You do. I mean, you can know the law and you can know the facts of the case, but you need to know how to deliver your argument. You need to sort of put the pieces together and present that to, 12 jurors in a way that they're going to respect and understand.
When did you get to the point in your career where you knew you were going to be a trial attorney?
So I knew that right when I started working at legal aid, the public defender's office. it was very exciting to me. It's almost like there was a scene at the end of training because 160 lawyers that are going to be spread out, let's say 40 in a borough in the city. And at the end of training, everybody's looking around. It's like Top Gun, who's the best of the best. And I clearly thought I was the best of the best.
Right.
So I was excited. And I got to my job and went to all the senior lawyers and said, I'll take all the crap cases you guys don't want. All of them. Just throw them all at me because I wanted to get experience. And that being aggressive like that helped because I got trials right from the beginning. Kind of wacky trials, but...
Yeah, and again, this isn't glamorous like television. This is you hanging out in jails, interviewing criminals, right? And maybe you don't want to know all the story.
Right.
You just need to know the facts. You need to defend them, right? It's not glamorous.
No, when you first listen, if you're a public defender, it's not glamorous at all because, as you said, let's say you go to do arraignments, which is when people get arrested, they're waiting to see the judge for the first time. And back then, there could be 100 defendants being arraigned in one session. It could be a day session, it could be an evening session, it could be midnight to 8 a.m., whatever sessions we had to work. And you would step back, and we called it the pens, and you would actually walk into the pens by yourself. And I guess I'll share this. It's the first day I'm on the job as a public defender. And my I guess I already used Ed as a mentor, but another mentor was a guy named Sam Gregory, great lawyer, good friend. Goes, come on, hotshot, I heard you're the guy. He says, let's go. We're going to go arraign all the prostitutes, right? I said, okay. We go in the back, and he goes, all right, all the hookers over here. All the hookers over here. Nothing appropriate, but all right. Calls them all over, and he goes, I got good news and bad news. They go, what's the bad news? And then the judge is going to give all of you 30 days in jail. And all the prostitutes start screaming. What do you mean? What happened to time served? We're supposed to get time served. Everybody gets time served when they see the judge. He goes, well, this judge is a little different. They scream, well, what could be the good news? And there's like 20 of them. And they're Brooklyn prostitutes. Like, you're not talking about Pretty Woman here, right?
Yeah, the street hardcore.
So they go, what could possibly be the good news? And Sam goes, well, it's the kid's first day on the job. And if you all flash them just a little bit, I might be able to get you that time served. And with that, these 20 women grab for their shirts, and I scream, no, 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 no. And Sam looks over at me and goes, not as cool as you thought, are you?
That's funny as hell.
Yeah. First day.
You forget so many stories, and then when they come around.
Yeah, absolutely. All
right. So at this point, when did you marry relation to this part in your career?
Probably I started at the public defender's office in September after law school, and I got married in June. Not a long engagement. Started a job, got engaged a couple weeks later.
Okay. At this point, you were living in Queens.
Yeah, Queens. Forest Hills.
Okay. So moving the career from here. You're learning how to defend. You're learning how to be a trial attorney. Probably not making any great money, just whatever. But
so I got some good experience in 2 years at the public defender's office. Was convinced to start a practice with another lawyer. Went into that practice, and everybody who was a public defender from my class, every time the judge told somebody that they needed to go hire a private attorney, they'd say, call Bill Ferro, because I was the first guy that went on his own. So I'm making some scratch doing that. And then one day this very, very attractive young Vietnamese woman walked in my office and said, my boyfriend needs help. I heard you're a good lawyer. His name was Tuan Tran, and I represented him. It was a really interesting case. And from that, after that, every 2 days, another Vietnamese person walked into my office. They were alleged to have, well, at this point, it's not alleged, but they were part of a gang called BTK, Born to Kill. And they sort of ran Chinatown along with some of the Chinese gangs. And so I became sort of counsel to everybody in Chinatown.
Okay.
And from that, it kind of grew to representing a lot of Colombian and Dominican drug dealers in Washington Heights.
It's just not pretty.
And then I started getting, murder cases. And by the time I was 35, I had done about 10 murder trials, and I was pretty popular and kind of really enjoying my career and making money.
So, your partner that you first associated with, were they also in criminal law?
Nope.
So is it common for attorneys to bond with somebody in a different angle of law?
It's kind of smart, I guess. Yeah. At the time it was smart because we used the money that I brought in on the criminal stuff to build up a personal injury practice because those cases cost money. So we would just kind of grab the money, and that money would come in, and it would come from we would get paid in the funniest ways. Criminals, I mean, New York City criminals in the 80s were unbelievable. I had this guy, Thomas Turner, and he represented a bunch of times, and then his mother came in, Mrs. Turner, and she said, Thomas is in jail, and I said, yes. And she said, well, I need you to represent him again. I said, well, Mrs. Turner, this time I need at least, $15,000 up front. And, it's like 1988, 89, whatever it is. And Mrs. Turner she was on a diet. She was about 285. And she reached into her bra on this summer day and slowly, very slowly, took out $15,000 cash. And then put it on my desk, and said, would you like to count it? I said, I don't even want to touch it. I have somebody that does that. So we had two different practices.
You started doing murder trials.
Mm-hmm.
This is where you start making money?
Yeah. At that time, it seemed like a lot of money. I'm a kid,
Yeah. And did you do any high-profile trials that you got recognition for?
Yes. I mean, a couple cases that were, in the New York Times, the Daily News, some pretty big stuff, actually.
That's good.
Yeah.
Let's go backwards again. We talked about you coming from a spiritual place with your family upbringing. You're certainly a popular guy in school, not afraid to put yourself out there. You weren't afraid to try new things in college, try new things in law. Back in school, to let off some tension, we sometimes get in a little fun, a little trouble sometimes. Give me one good story from high school that you enjoy repeating. Things that we're not supposed to do.
Well, let's see. It's good because I have a lot of them.
I have one in mind.
You do?
It's the bathroom.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I can tell that one. So I can't tell you who the teachers were, but there was a men's room and a ladies' faculty bathroom on the second floor of our high school. And we waited one day and we watched a few teachers go in both bathrooms, I think. And somehow we came up with this plan to tie the doors to probably the stairwell or something similar, just tight enough because the doors opened in that they could not get out. And teachers were banging on the door.
And why? We're bored. We have nothing else to do.
Listen, just like
attention.
Listen, you got to do what you got to do. I know you probably remember I had broke my leg and had crutches in 11th grade. And when you do that, you get a key to the elevator to the school because that's the only people that could take the elevator. And I would rent out the key to the elevator for either guys to fool around with their girlfriends or to smoke weed, like $5 a pop. And they kept coming back to me going, the elevator smells like pot. And I'm like, I don't smell like pot, do I?
So when you tied the rope around the thing, you had some help with you. You had some friends.
Uh-huh.
Did you get in trouble?
So our deans were Mr. Engert and Mr. Polina.
Mm-hmm.
And while we were troublemakers, we were fun troublemakers.
Right.
We weren't the back hallway troublemakers that were cutting out, getting high, doing all their things, whatever, rough and tumble fights. Like, we were more like jokesters. Pranksters, yeah. And I think, both Mr. Engert and more so Mr. Engert, but Mr. Engert and Mr. Polina saw the value in us. Not in our prankster, but saw that we had potential that we weren't really realizing. So where someone else might have gotten in a lot more trouble, we really didn't. The trouble wasn't too bad.
Right, you get detention.
Yeah. But no suspensions, just detention.
But on the side,
right?
Somebody said something to you. One of those deans said something to you, right?
Yeah.
Remember what did he say?
No, I don't remember.
He told you it was the best prank he saw.
Oh, yes, he did.
He's like, hey, don't tell me I said this, but that was one of the best things ever.
It was of all the pranks.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good one.
So, we went to a prom, a whole group of us back then. We got limousines. It was a prom weekend. It's, with the city. And do you remember what you wore to the prom?
Oh, I do.
Why don't you tell everybody what you wore to the prom? We're all in tuxedos, of course.
We are. Everybody wore a tuxedo. And it's funny, in our pictures of our group of friends, none of us is wearing the same colored tuxedo as the other because you went to the tuxedo store trying to be different.
Right.
And so I decided I would be different, sort of like, I don't know, Willy Wonka. I had gray or silver tuxedo with tails, a top hat, and a walking cane.
And a walking cane. You showed up at the prom with tails, a top hat, and a walking cane. Pretty ballsy.
Yeah.
Pretty attention-seeking. But pretty much painting that profile of who we're getting to that's now standing in front of a trial lawyer, a judge, and really arguing and pleading for people to defend them. Really. I just really think this all builds up.
I'm sensing this is more of a therapy session than an interview.
But you know what? But it takes balls to put on a top hat and tails to show up at a prom, and it takes balls to stand in front of a judge and defend somebody who is on a sentence for potentially life or maybe death. Then was death sentence?
Yeah, for a short period of time, it was death sentence.
So that's pretty crazy. So all right, so now your practice is starting to grow. What's the next? And when do we have children in this? Are we gotten there yet?
Yeah, we're kind of starting to have children. I have Dylan. We're living in Bayside. I have Dylan and Max in Bayside, and then Barb's pregnant with Sophie, and we moved to Long Island in 1996 or so.
And you still have the practice?
So I'm still only 34. Right?
And you still practice with your first partner in Manhattan?
Yes.
And you're still doing criminal and
personal
injury,
mm-hmm.
right? Okay.
Yeah. And practice is good, but we eventually split up, have our differences, difference of opinion on how we should run our business. And we split up. And at the same time we're splitting up, which is right before we moved to Long Island, Barb was really concerned about my behavior with respect to being a criminal lawyer.
From a safety point of view?
Yeah, because I guess you'd say this kind of fits the bill. So every Thursday evening, I would play basketball in the Marcy Projects. The Marcy Projects are by Myrtle and Nostrand in Brooklyn, where Jay-Z grew up. Really tough projects, and I would play basketball with my clients every Thursday. And I'd come home, and Barb goes, I read on the news there was a drive-by there yesterday. And I go, nobody's shooting at the lawyer. Everybody needs me to represent them. And she goes, all right, they'll find another lawyer if they shoot you. And then a couple times she saw clients meet me downstairs of our apartment building in Forest Hills, and she'd say, you're having drug dealers pay you in front of our house. They shouldn't really know where you live. Something goes wrong. So, again, I'm only 34, 35 years old. I mean, I'm kind of the man in my eyes.
Right.
Nothing can hurt me.
Nothing go wrong.
I got a white Firebird.
Yeah. The white Firebird.
But then we moved here and things sort of settled down, and I realized you could probably make more money doing the personal injury stuff, and started doing more of that. I still do criminal stuff, but our business is predominantly on the personal injury side now.
Okay, so after you separated from that partner, your next move was to start on your own, or you joined with another partner?
No, I just went on my own for a while, and then.
And you were doing personal injury and some law and some criminal.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Where was that office? Was that in Penn?
One Penn Plaza.
Okay, One Penn Plaza. Okay, got it. From there, you had that office for a while, didn't you?
I did. I think we got out of there shortly after 9/11.
Okay. At this point, now that you're leaving that office, how old are the kids? Dylan?
They're still in probably in elementary school, I'd say. Three of them, because when we moved there, they were probably 3, 1, and waiting to be born.
Yeah.
So they're probably still in elementary school, and you need to be home a little bit more too, because my office is still only in the city, so I'm driving to the city every day.
Right.
And trying to do the crazy hours more when I come home than staying in the office really late.
There's a point where you get involved with the school district. When does that happen?
Well, that happened about 14 years ago. So probably
kids in high school when you got in there? When you started that?
Yeah. So probably in 2000. 2010 or so.
What was your motivation to do this? Because you don't obviously have a lot of free time.
I don't, and I don't know. My oldest son Dylan was his junior year of high school, was having some issues with the principal and administration. I didn't think they were handling it that well, so I took an interest in to find out how they handled things. Listen, I've always been sort of a hands-off parent. If my kid does something wrong, he's got to deal with the consequences of it. But I just didn't think there was equity in the way they were handling situations sometimes, and so I decided to learn a little bit of out more about it, and then people encouraged me to run. At the time, I was running the travel soccer program in the town, so I knew a lot of people. I had coached all three of my kids' soccer teams, and then took the club from probably 8 teams up till 22 or 23 when I left. Wow. So then people said, "Why don't you run for Board of Ed?" And I ran against an incumbent, which they say is really tough to do. Somebody who's already on the Board of Ed when nobody is really disgruntled with the Board of Education. Right. But I had so much support. I had more support than I ever realized I would.
From the parents through the teams?
Through the teams, and then through the PTA, who knew our family as being good people, and, Barb being involved in the PTA. So those PTA moms, they carry a lot of clout in the district.
I guess
so. So, I had sort of everybody on my campaign team. And then Dylan was a senior in high school. So we did come up with the idea that nobody had really done before. You're 18 years old, you can vote. So, half the
for the school board.
Yeah, so half the high school students are 18 years old. So we took the high school president, who was a friend of my son's, and he, rallied all the students together and made sure they all went to vote. And the day of the election, they snuck up on the roof and they were like throwing Bill Ferro things down. And,
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, it was all good.
So the coaching with the teams, you're there getting involved because your kid's involved, and at some point you're coaching. Is this your inner desire, that sports thing from the back in the street when you're a kid growing up? You just want to be involved somehow?
No, I think it was more that my job had taken me away from family. I was almost never home for dinner.
Right.
Going to the city, being a trial lawyer. So I needed something that would force me to be there for my kids. So I volunteered to coach soccer, and then I just never stopped.
Right.
So when it was Max's turn, I volunteered to coach his team. When it was Sophie's turn, I volunteered to coach her team. And then the reason I became, in charge of the whole thing was not my ego, as some of the other things might be, but it was really because I could control the schedule, because I wanted to go to all their games and there were conflicts. Right. So if I made the schedule, I could make one of their games at 12 and one of the games at 2 and one of the games, and not get shuffled in different places.
Still a lot of work.
It is.
You got a lot going on. Really, there is a stupid amount of work to be involved in the kids' team. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. The parents are all hating every decision you make and all that. But you got a practice going on, and from here you go into the school board. And I'm thinking you might still be connected to teams at this.
So I did the school board for 12 years. First 2 years as a trustee, the next 10 years as president, and it was great experience. Worked with great people. Jericho School District's an amazing place. COVID changed all that.
When did you let go of the coaching in relation to being on the school board?
Right at the same time. It was almost like a conflict.
Okay, yeah, okay. All right. And just one final memory I have of, we all got into, when sports, we were all really into boxing.
Right.
We watched every fight. We followed everybody. We knew everything. But I have memories of going to your house and watching you spar with one of your friends, Larry.
Yeah.
Larry was watching. And you guys, you didn't have a ring. You didn't have headgear on. You didn't even have gloves or mouth guards on. What were you doing?
Ski gloves.
We
put on ski gloves.
Guys are in a room with ski gloves punching shit out of each other.
And then outside, we had kind of a little square part of my property, and we would just do it outside till one of us would knock the other one out cold. Like literally, it was a knockout. My mother would be up there going, "What are you doing?"
Good times.
Yeah.
Good times. All right. What was your most gratifying achievement with being part of running the school board for Jericho?
Yeah. So I think that the part of being on the school board that, interestingly enough, because Jericho has all of these academic accomplishments, but that's all about teachers and kids. School board really just helps everybody navigate and make sure everything's running smoothly. And that was really important for me, to let administrators do their thing, let teachers do their things, and let students be students. This is kind of sad, and it wasn't going to be what I was going to say, but I just thought about it. After the shootings in Parkland in Florida, there was a tremendous connection between Jericho kids and Parkland kids through sleepaway camps and things of that nature. So they knew some of them. And our students, there were walkouts in a lot of high schools against gun violence, and there should be more gun safety laws. And students around Long Island were being suspended for those rallies and for those actions. And in Jericho, I insisted, with the cooperation of the administration, that we let our kids protest how they thought they should protest. And we actually had them hold an outdoor vigil during school. We let them all walk out of school, and we stood with them, the administration and the Board of Education, and as many students that wanted to speak. Many of them cried, got to express themselves, got to express their anger and their emotions. And I kind of felt like we were a leader among school districts by doing that.
To me, this is another example of you not consciously doing it, but representing the underdog, giving the underdog a voice, putting them out in front of people to see that not everybody lives like we do all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So another example of that on the way. When did your practice change again? When I think we came here next.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I had a bunch of different offices, but
yeah,
at some point we
but ultimately you united with this group,
mm-hmm.
right? So let's talk about the group now. It's Cuba. Is it Ferro?
Ferro, Cuba, Mangano.
Ferro, Cuba, Mangano.
So I've been partners with Lance and Ken for quite a long time, over 20 years, separately. Ken and I were adversaries on a case and developed a friendship out of mutual respect as trial lawyers.
That's interesting.
He's like an older brother to me.
Right.
Really solid guy, and top 5 trial lawyers in all of New York, which allows me to do what I do here because I have somebody that's not only as good a trial lawyer as I am or was, but better.
But do you do similar? Is the practice? Do you do different things?
Ken and I do the same thing.
Oh, you
I
do?
mean, he doesn't do criminal law, but he does the personal injury, and he's always done that.
Okay.
Lance Cuba is one of the top real estate and transactional lawyers in Long Island and has been doing that. But his practice is really, it's nothing that we do. So while it's all under one roof, it's a very separate department.
Very different.
Yeah.
It's not in conflict. Well, it's not in a same level of conflict.
Right.
It is conflicting
Right.
a lot, as I know. When did this happen? When did the shoe collection, the shoe thing go on? When did this all start?
All right, so I do get bored sometimes. There's my phone. Sorry about that. This happened about, I don't know, a few months ago. I always liked sneakers, and now this is a website I became kind of obsessed with. It's not good. Like if there was a meeting for people who were addicted to sneakers, I would probably go and say, "Hi, my name is Bill. It's been 10 minutes since my
Are you drawn
last."
to the appearance, or is it the collectability of the shoe?
So I like the way they look, but these are the ones that I'm not really wearing because these are, I guess, a greater value.
More collectible stuff.
Yeah. So we'll see where that goes.
And I understand this kind of breeds through the office a little bit too.
It does.
Right? What happens?
Yeah.
Do other people in the office participate in this obsession?
Sometimes, not the obsession, but sometimes I get sneakers for people in the office or ask them what their size is, or it becomes kind of fun. And, now people are looking for Christmas gifts, and they're going, "Can you get my son a size 7?" So
that's cool. That's good. So your children long graduated high school.
Yes.
And one at least has become quite the athlete in soccer.
He is. I mean, Max is my middle son, and his full-time job is in sales. But he's always been very passionate about soccer. He's been a soccer player his whole life. He was playing semi-pro last year, but he started coaching about 2 years ago, and he's got a real passion for kids and teaching. So he coaches about 5 or 6 travel teams. He does private lessons, and now he just got hired to coach a semi-professional team, which is pretty cool. Yeah, he's got 3 or 4 different licenses now. He takes the national licensing test.
How old is Max?
He'll be 30 at the end of this month.
It's quite accomplished.
Yeah,
playing semi-pro is a big deal. Not everybody can get to that level. Let's start there. Decides to coach. What gets him into training and then leads to coaching? How does that?
So, he went to school in Miami, and like I did, he had to get a job. I said, you want those expensive apartments? I'm not giving you a credit card to go to clubs when you go to the University of Miami.
Right.
Sorry, that's not how we grew up. That's not how you're growing up. So he got a job coaching soccer there.
Okay.
Of really little kids, and he said it was kind of fun. And then he came back here, and it's good money, and the parents really like him. So like I said, he has 10, 12, 15 private clients at any time, where he's just giving one-on-one lessons to kids.
Now I should say at this point, Max is giving you 2 grandchildren?
He has, yes. Aiden and Damien. Aiden's 12 and Damien's 1, so they're pretty far apart.
Is Aiden playing soccer?
Aiden plays soccer too.
Dad coaching him? His team?
No, to life would be much easier if Aiden would maybe leave Locust Valley, which is where he lives most of the time, and come play for Max, who lives and coaches in Hauppauge.
Okay.
Because there's so many conflicts with all the teams that Max coaches. But Aiden just finished his first season playing for the middle school, and he's awesome.
Quite proud, huh?
Yeah.
Tell me about your oldest, Dylan. What's his journey? What did he do after college?
Sure.
And...
So Dylan graduated University of Wisconsin, got a job working for Yelp, doing phone sales. And I just remember saying to him when he got the job, how are you going to do phone sales? You mumble when you talk. And he goes, you're a trial lawyer and you mumble when you talk. I did that from college. So he's 32. So 10 years is a long time for someone to stay
I guess he showed you wrong on that.
First, he did. And I've seen him give, speeches to the 150 salespeople that work for him, and he doesn't mumble. So
is he inspiring when he speaks?
He is. And that's why he needed a new job. COVID again changed everything.
Yeah.
When COVID hit, they started going remote, and then Yelp decided we don't need offices anymore. So they're never going to bring people back to their offices. They had 25, 30,000 square feet just in New York City. Dylan said, you can't motivate people on a Zoom. No. At least maybe when COVID started, you could.
Right.
Because it was all new.
Right.
But, come back 3 years later, there's not a lot to say.
Everybody's offices are just, I'm hearing this everywhere.
But they're never going back. And then his team wasn't working as hard. And so it was just time for him to go. And so he's looking forward to his next venture.
Can we talk about that? What it is?
Yeah, he's going to work for a company called Blue Vine, which is sort of a lender, commercial lender for businesses. And they just opened up their banking division for their corporate clients.
Okay.
And they have about 10 or 12 salespeople. So Dylan's going to run their sales team for him. He's the director of sales for a new bank.
That's amazing. Congratulations to Dylan. Where is he based? Where is he taking his life at this point? Where is it?
So him and his wife currently live in Greenport. They're renting like an off-season house, Labor Day to Memorial Day in Greenport, which is pretty far out. And now he got this new job in 2 days a week. He's happy to go into the office, but it's in somewhere in New Jersey.
Oh.
So that's going to be a long commute those 2 days. Somehow
Okay.
I have a feeling he'll be crashing at our house.
Right.
They never really go away.
Okay.
Which is cool by me.
Yeah.
And then Sophie's my baby. She's engaged. To a great guy. Recently engaged. Great guy, Andrew. And
what was Sophie's career? What did she go to school for?
Sophie went to school. I don't know what she went to school for. She'd be mad if I said that, but she worked for Viacom for a bunch of years right out of school, in doing ad sales or placement of ad sales. So she didn't really do the sales. She placed them on different, Nickelodeon, I think was her station.
Okay.
But she started going to school for graphic design while she was working there. And she left there, got a job doing graphic design for a company called Wellbell. And she became their creative director for the last couple of years and really has helped build their brand. They're a huge, huge company now. She was in charge of all of their creative, and now she is the proud owner of SJ Perceptions, which is her own creative agency, where she does brand development for other companies from scratch, from picking their color schemes to their designs to their websites. She's directing photo shoots now. She did a photo shoot last week in the city for a new client.
Kind of has some threads that go back to what your mom did, because your mom wasn't just selling invitations for weddings and stuff. This was high design, very artistic stuff back in the day. Picking the stock, picking the design, picking the ribbons and there's a lot going on there, and I just wonder if
there's a
creativity comes through a little bit.
There's a creativity to that.
All right, let's come back to your business. Your business has grown since you've been here. How long have you been here now?
I've been in this building almost 15 years.
Yeah, and you've expanded your business to do more than just criminal and personal injury. You actually built a radio station here.
We did, and I've kind of taken a step back from that now. Because you can only have so many focuses. The thing that we're probably most proud of here is the brand that we build. We built a brand called Liga de Justicia, which translates to the Justice League.
Which not everybody could say as well.
Right.
You got it down. Charlie's taught you well.
Right.
I'm still struggling to get it out just right. I still sound like an American saying it.
I know. People do all the time.
Yeah.
But that's a brand that's geared towards the Latino and immigrant community, which is a huge part of our community here in Long Island.
Why did you choose to go for that brand,
Well,
for that community?
initially it was an advertising thing. Like I thought of a way to advertise that didn't necessarily have to put me on television or on the radio, that we could do more of a grassroots thing. And the demographic is the fastest growing demographic in the country.
Sure.
And to do what I wanted to do, there's less competition there, at least at the time I started it, than there is in the Anglo market. You know, everybody wants to be 1-800-Lawyers, I Am Hurt, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's less law firms that were focusing on the Latino community.
So initially, it's an advertisement thing to maybe bring in some of the Latino community as customers for either criminal or personal injury, right?
Yeah.
But it evolves.
It evolves to the point that our advertising tact is really to give back to the community. All right. So that instead of running commercials, we started doing different events, whether it was a small back to school event, if it was a carnival, whatever it was to invite people to. We had in our parking lot here, we had, client, appreciation days where we would barbecue for them. And it just kept growing and growing.
To whoever was just calling Bill, if you're stuck in a the precinct with cuffs on, he'll get to you in a few minutes. So it's become a real community thing, and it's really grown bigger than that. And it's come into doing events multiple times a year, and the events got big too. Let's talk about some of those events and how big they've gotten.
So at the urging of some dear friends and sort of in the political spectrum, they suggested that we were doing so much good for the community, but that it might come back to kick me in the ass one day, because lots of people started to join the movement of these events, and they would donate money or write a check or whatever it was that they would donate, and they would write the checks to me or my law firm, and I would deposit them and just spend the money. And no one has ever questioned where the money went, but one day they thought maybe somebody would. So we started at their urging, we started our own not-for-profit. So it's the Liga de Justicia Foundation. We have an executive director and a board, and it's allowed us to do our events. So every year for the last 8 years, we've partnered with Senator Monica Martinez, and we've done back to school. This year we had about 2,000 kids throughout Long Island, particularly in her senatorial district, that we serviced for back to school. Backpacks, school supplies, haircuts, food, everything free. Christmas, this is going to be, and Charlie will correct me, but this will be our 12th year, I think. And we service about 1,500 kids at Christmas time. We have a coat drive and a radiothon next week, and we intend on later this month to give out 500 new coats to children, underprivileged children. We have a after-school program through the foundation. We had a summer camp this year with 23 kids going to summer camp. Took them to different attractions, locations, educational fun throughout Long Island. Medaya helps about 250 plus kids a year from the Brentwood, Bayshore, Central Islip area do their college applications and their financial aid applications.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So this thing has really gotten big. It's not an advertising ploy for another community. It's taken off to be giving back to the community. And it really is driven by your heart and who you are and who you came from, of really looking out for people who are less served, less and underprivileged. And I've witnessed some of these events, and they're amazing. I mean, the Christmas started out as a Christmas store, right? And it was at the office. And it got so big, you blew out the walls of the office. COVID forced you.
Right. COVID forced us to move it outside and do a drive-through under a tent.
Which became very logistical. And this thing runs better than a restaurant with reservations. This is really clockwork.
It's funny because I know, and I thank you and your family for volunteering every year and all the support you give us. But, you've seen firsthand how it works. And people have said, don't you want to go bring it back indoors and rent a place or do it at a school? But it's hard to service that many people in that many hours.
Yeah.
So we legitimately run, 9 or 10 straight hours at 50 cars an hour. So that's basically a minute, a minute per car, if you think about it. So the cars are lined up down vets. And when we're moving right and getting the bags and they get their bags of toys that have already been, pre-selected for their particular kids. So we have to match the bags to their tags, and they get gloves and hats and scarves, and for the whole family that the Levy family has donated for the last 5 years, and last year they got pies, and another year they got food, and we're always trying to do something else. And Santa Claus is waving to them, and we have kids, doing Christmas carols. Little kids in a choir, big kids in a choir, a cappella groups, whoever we can get to entertain.
It's quite festive. I mean, there's a DJ blast in here. There's high energy music, to say the least, right? Yeah. It's just the reason I do it is I want to participate, but it's just such a good feeling to be involved somehow, helping a community that doesn't have some of the things that I forget that I have. Right? Yeah. I take it for granted that I have a certain lifestyle. And then you realize not everybody does.
And it's good. The thing that I'm most proud of is that my kids come every year and volunteer. And, last year, my grandson comes every year and volunteers. And last year it was his picture in Newsday.
Yes.
As he was handing out the pies to all the cars as they came through. And, this year as Max's family has expanded, and he's got married to Justine, and she's got 2 sons that are, I suppose they'd be my step grandsons. I'd like to see them involved. And, the more young people you can show, even when your life's tough, that there's always somebody who has it worse than you. It's just a great feeling.
It is a family event. It's totally a family event. Your wife's here. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into this prior to the day of is the easiest of all of it, isn't it?
Probably because everything's sort of set up, and you might have stresses on the day of, but figuring out, which 10,000 toys to buy.
Yeah, I know.
Is incredible.
So just to give an idea, when people are driving through, they get a pre-prescribed bag of toys that they've asked for, and you've put that, your team has put that together for them. I've seen now that they're also getting bags of food to potentially take home to make a meal. You have raffles that are going on, and people are getting bonus prizes along the way.
So the raffles are big. So every hour we have probably 8 or 10 raffles. So that means throughout the course of the day, we have 10 50-inch flat screen TVs, 10 bicycles, 10 tricycles. There could be headphones or PlayStations, like just, stuff that people have donated or people have sponsored. And that becomes, and that's randomly done. So basically somebody, we don't know the people. So on their cards, they'll have a sticker. And if they don't know it, and they're driving through with the card. And if it has a pink sticker, it means they won the TV. And all of a sudden the last person says, "Hey, you want a TV?" I'd be like, "What do you mean I want a TV? I just got all these toys." And it's great to watch.
It's crazy. It's crazy. People are so grateful and so thankful. Your team is so energized and enthusiastic about it. You're making a huge impact in the community. How do you find these families that are in need to give to them? How do they get selected, the right people?
So first of all, now that we have our own foundation, we have families that are pre-qualified through our foundation. So let's say we'll start with 200 of our families. And then we'll reach out to Head Start, which is another not-for-profit, and we'll say, okay, you have 150 families. Latina Sisters Support is a group that we added last year, and this year they're making me an honoree at their gala at the end of this month. But those are women that are suffering from cancer and have families and children, so their children are now part of it, and Pronto has been part of it. So we let each individual not-for-profit sort of provide us with the people that they, like to help, the people in need. And then they all come down and help volunteers so they know when their families are coming because, again, it's very regimented. You get a specific time to come. And it's tough. It's the only time that we have to be tough. If somebody comes at 10 o'clock and their time was at 2 o'clock because they have a job, it's really tough because we can't find their toys because we only have outside the 10 and 11. We haven't got near to the 2. But we try our best. Someone will run in and find the 2s and start juggling through them.
The team has done this enough. You have, your staff stays with you. You don't have people coming and going here. And your staff knows it well enough. And it's pretty quick how they adjust to a little thing like that. They really do adjust quick. And I know you're all stressed out and you're trying to run. But the thing is, when you were sick, you actually couldn't even be here. And it ran really well anyway.
Yeah. Was it the first COVID year or the second? I got COVID, and I couldn't be here, and I watched the whole event. We broadcast it live so I could watch it on Zoom, and then at the end of the day, I got in my car and
we drive by with the glass up.
I drove through the toy store just because I needed to kind of just.
But again, because your team is so committed to what they're doing, this is a labor of love that's going on here. It's not a ploy to make new clients and stuff. It's just not.
Right.
and I've seen that, and you're incredibly charitable, and I love the fact that your family is completely engaged. Now, I've seen some of the stuff that goes on beforehand. I mean, in your spare time, which you really don't have a lot of, you're out there shopping. You're in the city shopping with a pile of cash, trying to see who's got 50 of this and 20 of those, and it's a chore collecting. It's not just easy. People can throw you money. That's great. You can go out and select, but
And people do donate toys, and it's wonderful. We have people from all over the country. Actually, some people drive here and because they've heard about it through the news. But if you don't do the massive shop yourself, you're never going to satisfy all those needs. We took a 20-foot U-Haul one time into Brooklyn, and I totaled a car with a 20-foot U-Haul trying to park it. Listen, if you've never parked a 20-foot U-Haul and you're used to driving a car, there's just not quite as much room as
well, you say you totaled a car. There's a point where you're supposed to hit the brake and realize you've already made contact.
It was a little car. It was a little car, and it was parked, and it didn't take much to. I'm not saying it was total, but we ripped off the front bumper.
Oh, God.
And it wasn't the most welcoming of neighborhoods. Right. The owner of the store kept going, stop waiting outside to see whose car it is. You should wait inside just in case the person's not nice. And it happened to be a really nice woman, and we called the cops and took care of her.
Again, one last piece about this Christmas event that's coming up. It's coming up real quick, actually.
December 16th.
Right, okay. And, the local TV stations cover it. This is on CBS. I've seen it on News 12, right?
Yeah.
Your own radio station is doing it. So it's become an event. People want to come here and show the
We get good coverage every year. Newsday, News 12, like I said, CBS. We were just featured on ABC News. So it's some good stuff.
Yeah, and your grandson's representing.
Yeah.
He's a spokesperson.
I've seen it. We framed his Newsday article. He's got it hanging in his house. So.
I mean, one last point. Besides the bags and the raffles, these children are going home with bicycles, and there's bicycles for all different age groups.
Right.
If it's not a bicycle, it's a little mini car. I mean, it's just cool. It's a great event to.
And I'll tell you one last story about that. And it was one of our first years, and we did the raffle, and it was on News 12 and Newsday. And this woman won a bicycle, and she was so excited, and she was crying and crying, and she said, "I have only one dilemma." What's that? She said, "I have twins. I'm not sure which one I should give it to, but maybe they'll just share the bicycle." And it runs on the news, and I get a call from a total stranger. "Hi, my name's Mike. I saw the news article. I'd like to buy the other child a bike." I said, "You'd like to buy him a bike?" And he says, "Yeah." He goes, "I don't really have time to go to the store, though. I'm going to give you my credit card. Can you do it over the phone yourself?"
Incredible.
He's trusting me. Guy doesn't know me. Gives me his credit card information. I went out and bought the same bike, different color, and delivered it to the woman. So there's so many good people out there in what's become kind of a sad world. So it's a great day because of stories like that.
Yeah, it is.
This guy Tony read about it, and he drives from Virginia every year. Charlie helps him unload his car. He drives from Virginia every year with a carload full of toys.
Yeah.
He calls in advance, asks when it is, and just delivers. One year, we were a little short. Toys for Tots and the Marines just stepped up and said, "Come to Garden City. We'll fill 2 trucks worth of toys." So.
It's really quite amazing. And anybody wants to participate or donate, Charlie will post all the information you need on this video to get in touch, because you'll want to be involved somehow. It's really inspiring. So you've taken the business to a new level recently. What's going on now?
So we recently acquired an immigration practice in New York City, in Manhattan, a practice that's been around and established for 60 years. A lot of work. I think most people our age are starting to wind down. I don't know at 61 that I need to be buying new practices, but it's sort of Lance's baby, and he's running with it. And we have his son Luke, who's an attorney, involved, which is kind of nice for their family. But it kind of fits. My clients are predominantly immigrants, so to have an immigration team that can help them provide the quality of legal services that I demand of the people that we refer cases to is important. There's a lot of people who need lawyers, and a lot of people through the last 5 or 10 years have been taken advantage of by the system and by immigration lawyers. So I think it'll be a good thing for our clientele.
Did this big connection that you've developed with the Latino community inspire that angle, or did it just kind of happen?
It did. And my whole inspiration, goes back to a friend of mine. His name's Reverend Alan Ramirez, one of the most well-respected immigrant advocates in Long Island. I had lunch with him maybe 10 years ago, and I paid a publicist $500 to set up a lunch with him. And we became fast friends. And we became fast friends because he was a better lawyer than me, even though he was a priest. And he sort of led me down the path of asking me questions, which showed the inherent similarities between the immigrant population of today, Latino population, and the Jewish population from when our grandparents came here from Europe, my grandparents from Russia, how they lived, where they worked, what they did, and there was a huge parallel. And so he really taught me a lot and has been a huge part of what I do.
Yeah, everybody came from somewhere. There's not a lot of people from in this United States that could say their roots are from here,
Right.
really. And with all the bad stuff that's going on in the world and even in the country, people forget we all came somewhere, but it was different. It was different then when they came, and they came here and they found a way to move themselves up in class. And the newer generations are not experiencing the same. We have strange immigration rules. They're not evenly applied, I'm sure. And certainly the Latino community is a big community that needs to be served. And I think you're doing well with that.
Thanks.
I want to point out, again, the thread of you involving your family in this, because your parents brought you into synagogue, brought you into a community of giving and being involved. You're doing the same with your children, whether you're consciously doing it or not. It's just an evolution that's being passed down to them. And I'm sure they will grow, mature to do these kinds of things too. You've done well for yourself. You're not somebody that needs to drive hard to make more money right now. You just don't. Listen,
Right.
I'm not in your bank account. I'm not in your
Right.
wallet. I don't fucking know. But you're an attorney that's very successful. You've created a tremendous amount. But I know you as an incredibly giving person. You're not doing these things for the buck. You're doing these things because you're absolutely motivated to serve and help a community. Now, I have a personal story that you maybe don't even remember. And, just to document the kind nature you have for people. My wife had pulled into a parking lot a few years back at a Walmart and saw somebody living out of a car, and it really shook her. And she felt so horrible. She didn't know how to figure it out. She had a little baby, I think, and she didn't know what to do. And I said, well, give Bill a call. He knows maybe the right contacts and resources. And she called you, and you picked up the phone immediately, and you said, where is she? And she told you, and you hung up the phone, and you physically drove to this parking lot in Walmart, right on a dime. You helped this person and brought them right to the right resource. And this has no monetary value to you at all for a person who has no time on hand. I think it just documents who you really are inside. Your spirit really is.
Thanks.
So just to say on camera that I'm incredibly proud of you. I'm incredibly, appreciative to have grown up with you and know your family, and all these great things that you have become, they rub off on all of us, not just your family, right? So congratulations and thank you for all that. What's the future now? So the immigration thing is really the biggest thing on your thing. Certainly there's a lot of Latino, I presume people who are in this country illegally are maybe not comfortable picking up a phone and calling an attorney.
They're not, but they're comfortable with us because of the way we approach them, because of the reputation we have for helping people. And that's why we created a brand specifically geared towards that. So, what our client base is Guatemalan, Ecuadorian, Honduran, Mexican, Salvadorian, basically. We don't get a lot of clients that are Dominican or Puerto Rican because they're more Americanized. Our brand is, you can tell it's geared towards, not intentionally, but it just attracts more the newer immigrants.
Why
here.
do you suggest that those two communities are more Americanized?
Well, first of all, Puerto Rico they are American.
Right, okay.
But Dominicans are very Americanized. They come here and they just live differently, and their social behaviors are different.
Do they have a leg up becoming legalized in the country?
No, I don't necessarily think so. Everybody's got to go through the process. But, again, here, the clients we represent are the clients here in New York and in Long Island. And I say this proudly that, people can put down immigrants and say, they're not here legally. But, you were in the restaurant business for a really long time. Without the immigrant population, there would be no restaurant business. There would be no hotel business.
farming communities.
Farming, right? The wineries. I mean, think about it. I mean, nobody else is taking those jobs, and these people are working their ass off to make a better life for themselves.
To your point, I opened a restaurant many years ago, a steakhouse in a very affluent area, when the busboys would drive up in a BMW. Right? Nobody wants the job. They don't want that job. They're going there because their parents said, get the heck out of the house. They don't need the money. The dishwasher, they're not taking that job. And the Latino community is happy to work. And not only are they happy to work, they're happy to work hard. And quite frankly, in hiring, I almost want to give that person an advantage because they're going to work hard for me. And they're going to be reliable, they're going to show up. It's a tremendous community. So to your point, you know, they're not taking anyone's job. There's nobody applying for the job that they're taking. So.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a incredibly great hour. I don't want to kind of kill the day on you, but I really appreciate you throwing me some time. I didn't know how we were going to do this today, if we're going to sit in our jeans with a cocktail and just tell some old stories. But what you don't know is I'm going to put some photographs up when we edit the film, and I'll put some points in time, and you might enjoy some of them, and you might.
Cool. I bet I will, because you always come up with the good photos. So.
You know, the thing is, too, is whenever I do these interviews with folks, there's always after the fact people tell me, you know, my own family told me to watch the interview and they didn't know certain things about me because you don't talk about it. And so somebody will learn something from this, whether it's your grandchildren or even your own children, but somebody will come out. So it was a great time.
I'm sure. Oh, it's great.
Thanks so much. So feel free. We'll be everywhere you want to see us. We're going to be on Spotify. We're on YouTube for the full-length interview. As you know, Charlie will snip this and cut it in pieces and post it on TikTok and everywhere else. You'll be tagged. Please, if you're interested in getting involved with the foundation, you can reach out. We'll have that information posted. So thank you this afternoon.